Okay, so we are live now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the iSpring Solutions webinar series, where every week we talk about e-learning trends, share iSpring tips and tricks, and cover clients' cases. My name is Paulina. I am the community manager at iSpring, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar, where we will be talking about how you can improve learner experience with 6 simple graphic design principles. And to cover this wonderful topic, I have invited 2 brilliant presenters. Everyone, please meet Meg Fairchild, instructional technologist at Lamasoft, and Sam Degas, Learning Experience Manager at Lamasoft as well. Hello, ladies. Thanks a lot for tuning in. How are you doing today?
We're doing great.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Awesome. All right, so before I pass the mic over to you, I would like to cover a couple of tech moments for our today's attendees. So first of all, guys, if you will not be able to sit through the whole session, don't worry because it's being recorded. So you will receive a link to a replay sometime after the webinar. However, I would like to encourage you to stay till the very end because it's an amazing opportunity to address your questions directly to our today's presenters. And to do so, please submit them in the question box, which you will find on the right side of the GoToWebinar panel. And at the end of this webinar, we are going to have a Q&A session, so please keep these questions coming. Okay, I think that's all on my end, so I would like to pass the mic over to our today's presenter.
Welcome everyone. As Paulina mentioned, we're covering 6 graphic design principles. So here's our agenda that we're going to cover for today. Actually, Sam, do you want to go ahead and talk to that?
Sure. Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us today. So this is something that's very close to Meg and I's hearts. We're both graphic designers and instructional designers. So we really like to use these graphic design principles that we're going to talk about today. We've got 6 of them that we're going to show you. We use these graphic design principles to help focus our learners' attention. That's really the main goal that we have for you today. It's wrapped up in the quote you see at the bottom of the screen here, that good design is obvious, but great design is transparent. We're really trying to reduce the cognitive load of the learner and get them to focus on the right thing at the right time with these principles. So we're going to show you those principles. We'll give you some tools that you can use to critique your own designs to see if these principles are coming together for you. And then we're going to show you how to use tools in PowerPoint to implement those principles as well. So that's a tool that we should all be familiar with, and there's a lot of helpful hints and tricks in there. If we don't have time, we have a great tip sheet that you can use along with these principles to kind of see how you can improve your designs for your learners.
Great. So just a quick welcome. We just wanted to say hello, make sure you got whose face goes with which name there, and we hope you're all doing well and staying safe and healthy, and your families are safe and healthy as well. We want to get to know you a little bit as well here, so we have some questions for you. The first question, if you could respond in chat, what are some of those design tips that you have heard before? Maybe you hear it once, and then it's the thing that you always see every time you look at anything going forward. So take a few quick seconds to type something into the chat.
So we already have some questions coming in, and some of them are: don't use too many words, avoid too much text,
Yeah.
do not fill slides with words again.
Yeah, that's a great one, Paulina, and everybody. Thank you for contributing. We're again talking about the cognitive overload, and people so often in presentations will put the entire text on screen and then they'll talk to it, and that kind of hits the brain from 2 different ways. So you definitely do want to keep that light. And we're going to focus really on how you can set up the elements to leave some space for that text and really make sure that the brain can rest and focus on the key message.
Great. The next question that we have, we'd like to have you all respond in the poll tool. So this is about how often do you put together and create presentations for an audience, whether that's a presentation that you're doing virtually, whether it's a presentation you're doing in person. Go ahead and give us some information on that.
So far, we have the most popular option, 65% for frequently.
Excellent, excellent. Glad to hear that we've got people on the development spectrum here, and everything you're going to learn today goes beyond presentations. You can use this stuff for creating like an Instagram or social media square with information, any other kind of documentation that you create. So definitely think about applying these principles beyond just the slide deck.
Excellent. So our next poll question is around who you are coming to this. So what role or what industry are you in?
Okay, so I launched the poll and we already have some answers in the chat. So education, local government, healthcare, a lot of government, oil and gas training. And so far in the poll, the most popular answer, 53%, is going for the trainer.
Excellent.
Okay, excellent.
All right, so I think I can close the poll and share the results with everyone again so that you can see that it's trainer, then 40% for course developer, 32 instructional designer, and then we have education and graphic designer. Let me hide the poll results and pass the mic back to you, ladies.
Excellent. So thank you for answering that. That gives us a good sense of who is here, and we can tweak what we say a little bit to make sure that we're meeting our audience. But of course, all of this applies to everyone here today.
Excellent. So we're gonna focus on really the learner aspect. We've got a lot of you on the call right now who are probably given a lot of different content from a lot of different people, and then you need to churn it out and give it to your end users. So we're gonna try to get you in the mindset of using these principles to really reduce that cognitive load. What can you do to help clean up what you're getting or create something that's as meaningful as possible? So as an example, and we'll want you guys to respond in chat for this, we have an image here of Where's Waldo. For those of you who aren't familiar with this book, this is an American children's book. It's kind of a seek and find game, but you look on these pages and you try to find a person within this who's a little hard to find. So go ahead and respond in chat, but why is it so darn hard to find Waldo on this page?
So we already have some responses. Too much going on visually, too much red and white stripes, distraction by similar information, that is not what you were looking for. So much red and white, too crowded, clutter, unnecessary stuff, etc.
Cognitive overload. You guys are just screaming it right now. There's too much going on and the brain has no idea where to focus. So if you're looking at a presentation or you're seeing things and things just aren't aligned and you're getting distracted, this is an example of that chaos. So Meg, if you can go to the next slide, just to reinforce the things that you're talking about here. Absolutely, there is not enough contrast between the objects. There's too much similarity in these objects, right? Waldo isn't like bright neon purple. He's wearing red stripes just like 90% of these people. The proximity between the objects is chaotic. So you guys were talking about too much going on. It is chaos. The brain wants a grid. The brain wants order instantly. So that's lacking in this image. Again, no organization, no symmetry. It's all chaotic. You've got the repetition, no distinction. So some opposite sides of the coin there, right? Similarity and contrast. But the main point here is somebody actually used these principles correctly because it was designed to be hard. They knew that the objective of the learner was to make it hard to find Waldo. That's what makes the learner engaged with this book. It's actually called cognitive dissonance, and it's something that can draw somebody in. If you really want to draw interest, you can specifically make things chaotic For our purposes, usually we typically don't want to do that unless we're doing some sort of gamification. So we're really going to talk about these principles that you can use to give order, to give meaning, and give that brain just a few seconds to find what's important in your message. And of course, if your objective is to find Waldo, you might design a screen like this. He's in the center, he's got good contrast, and we know exactly where Waldo is.
Awesome. So we're going to go over the 6 principles with you. We're going to talk about a definition of each one. We'll give you some examples of each of these 6 principles, and then we'll also talk a little bit about some ways that you can look at a design and critique it or evaluate it, so that you can use these going forward in your own designs or with designs that you come across in other presentations or all throughout the world. So these 6 principles, we've got contrast, similarity, proximity, alignment, symmetry, and repetition. So those are the 6 principles that we'll go over next. Our first one is contrast. So this is all about the level of distinction between 2 different objects. So you've got many different aspects that you can make different or similar, whether it's color, its tone or value, the size or the shape, as well as maybe the direction that something is pointed in your screen.
Thank you, Meg. So this is exactly talking about why Waldo was hard to find, right? For a learner, contrast is going to help define that something is different, and it's going to help define a hierarchy. So if you're showing something complex and you need the learner to focus on something first, maybe it's a starting point or maybe it's the main message, you're going to add some contrast to that so the eye is drawn and the brain can rest there. Without that, the learner starts searching for the message and they don't know where to start. So you can also use this to chunk information and show differences. You can think of like a do's and don'ts list, right? Like those are typically 2 sides of the screen. You have a contrasting box, and because those things are separate, the brain can go through the do's list and they can process it, and it can go through the don'ts. If you interchanged those things, so it was all in one list, you start to get into that cognitive overload. So this is really what we're talking about with contrast. Looking at our icon in the upper right, your eye is drawn to that yellow hexagon. You know that's the step that you're on, or that's the most important step that you should be focusing on right now.
All right, so let's take a quick look at an example. What issues do you see with this particular image and the contrast specifically in this image? So go ahead and type that in the chat.
Glenda says, oh my God, best definition of contrast I have seen. So some of the responses are not enough contrast, colors are too similar, no focal point, all same tone, it looks similar, the important part isn't in the boldest color, difficult to see.
Yep.
More
Yep.
of a
So
shadow than an image.
yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, so definitely a lot of issues with contrast here. Not a lot of difference in colors. Very similar. So it's not really telling a very good story here. If we wanted to, one way that we can critique this or evaluate it is by using a squint test. So to do this, you actually want to put a little distance between yourself and the screen in front of you. So you may actually like get up from your chair, scoot yourself back, and then you're gonna look at your design, but squint your eyes so that you can see what it looks like. Maybe for somebody who has not the greatest vision or less than perfect vision, but it also helps certain things to pop out and shows you where people's primary focus will be when they look at your image. So we'll go ahead and do that with this image. And when I do that and I step back, really what I see mostly is a couple of bubbles, a few very small circles on my screen. And I'm sure you're all kind of doing the same thing as me, squinting your eyes at your computer screens. So if we were going to change the contrast in this image, we might do something a little more like this. We're going to bump up the difference in the colors. We've also done a little bit more than just that. We've actually changed the size of things here. This tells a different story. It's not just a diver and a shark. It's a tiny diver and a really big shark, and it gives maybe a little bit more emotional appeal as well. So we can change our message entirely by changing contrast as well. So that's that example.
Thank you, Meg. So on the other side of that coin, very extremely closely related is similarity, right? Similar to contrast, you can make things similar colors, shapes, sizes, or direction, and show that there's a relationship there. Looking at the icon on the screen right now, these are two separate groups of information, but something is similar about the two nodes that are yellow.
Great. So if you're thinking again, same things as we kind of talked about with contrast, it's just the other side of the coin. We use it to chunk information together. Like Sam said, those two yellow things, we could say there's something about those that that's grouped, and it helps relay that relationship between things. And everything here it's really just a balance. You don't want everything to be different. You also don't want everything to be the same. So it's about balance in your design and helping to relay hierarchy of information so that we lessen that cognitive overload for our learners.
So this is another method that you guys can use to critique your own visuals and your own slides. So Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Blink, and one of the principles in there is that it takes about 2 seconds to jump to a series of conclusions. So what you can do is you can take a starting page, an image, a slide, whatever it is, show it to somebody for 2 seconds, and then take it away. Ask them, do you know where to start? Do you know what the purpose of this message is, or what the focus is? And that's a way to know if you have nailed that balance of these principles. So we're gonna do one right now. So everybody have your chat open, and we're gonna see if you can pass the 2 second blink test here. But we're going to show an image for 2 seconds and then quickly take it away. And what we want you to answer is if you know where the pilot is. So Meg, go ahead and show that slide. All right. So did anybody pass the pilot test?
Everywhere?
Okay.
Difficult. Third row. Center. No, no, no. I don't think I even saw it for 2 seconds.
Yeah, we're in a virtual environment right now. I can say that this works a little bit better when we have you all in the room and we can kind of like click the button. But
Right.
thank you for
And
participating.
somebody said lower right side, second from the bottom.
Oh, that is if I had some swag, I'd throw it your way. So basically what we're doing is you know, if you want the learner to focus on something, you're going to have to do something more like what Meg is about to do. So keep an eye on the screen again. Pretty good, right? Like where we know where that guy was. He was red, he was different. So when you're using similarity and contrast, just know that the brain instantly starts to look for some sort of resting place or some sort of starting point. So you're going to use contrast and similarity to help the learner know where to start.
Excellent. So our next principle is proximity. So this is about where things are placed in relation to each other on your slide. It's about things being near to each other. We tend to, if they're close together, we organize them into a group. So you would immediately look at this example here on the screen and say, even though there's no line connecting them, those 4 hexagons around the middle one, those are all grouped together. And then these 2 that are over here, even though we've taken that proximity away, we're indicating, okay, something's different about these. but we're also then using that line to tie them together. So proximity, you can play with it in different ways by putting things close together, by pulling them apart, by connecting them somehow in some way.
Yeah, so Meg covered a lot of these already. The only thing that I would call out differently is that you're really thinking about minimizing clutter here. Again, if you mentally remove those lines, those two other shapes are just kind of floating out there. So you can use proximity to group things together, make sure that you have some sort of nice spatial distance between your objects. And then when you change that distance, it's intentional. Because if that intention isn't there, like I said, if we took those lines off, we don't really know why those two shapes were moved away. So you can use your proximity to communicate whether something is related or apart, but you still need to do some sort of support for the brain to help communicate why that thing is a little farther away.
So as an example here, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the minivans where we've got family stickers all around the back of the minivan. And so here's an example that we've created playing with proximity. And if I was to see this on the road, I might think, I don't think that family really likes their cat, or maybe their cat doesn't like them. But if we were to change the proximity here, and here we've even changed the direction of that cat by flipping it around, having him face the family, that creates a much different message about the family and their relationship with the cat.
So you could apply alignment to that cat example as well, right? If the cat was a little bit lower than the family, maybe maybe it's underground, or, why isn't the cat on the same plane as the family? So alignment, that principle we're really talking about, the space, the distance, are they on the same axis, and are they on the same grid?
So alignment, if it's something that's been brought to your attention, it's one of those things that once you watch a presentation and you see, like the third bullet point is not aligned with all the rest of the bullet points, it can start to drive you a little bit bonkers. And part of that's because alignment, it just creates this sense of unity and harmony and consistency. We see things aligned, and our eye can rest. We don't have to think about anything that we're seeing on the screen. It all looks cohesive, nothing's out of place, and it doesn't draw your attention because it looks, for some reason, like it's out of place.
Yeah, so here's an example of how alignment can help a message get through to the learner, and help it be more of a kind of an emotional response. So we have an icon on the left of a skyscraper, and then a quote on the right of, if you were near the top of the world's tallest skyscraper, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, you'd feel the building sway about 2 meters. Like, this is a pretty big area. If I was on the top of a building, I'd be a little freaked out. But the way that these things are put on the slide, there's not a lot of relationship between these two things. So if we change this and apply some alignment, what we've done is we've aligned the quote to the top of the building. Gives you a sense of actually being up there and knowing that that quote is directly related to that point. That is where we want your mind to be. We want you to mentally be on the top of that building as you read this quote. Another thing we did is we left aligned the text to that object. That's always a good best practice. If you have an object with a descriptor next to it, try to left align that text so it's nestled up against it, and avoid using center alignment on text. A lot of you responded with too much text on slide, right? Like that's one of the things that's just maddening as a graphic designer and an instructional designer. But from a brain science perspective and how we interpret visuals, we like, especially in the Western cultures, our brain goes back to the left when we read. So when you have that center alignment, it's always jagged, and your brain has to kind of search. And you always want to try to keep your text sentence lengths, or not to the sentence, but the length of the line to a certain limit. You don't want text to go all the way across the screen, because the eye is going to get bored, they're going to get confused. So there's some alignment tips that we did there. We left align the text, we aligned it to the shape. The other thing I'll call out here which isn't one of our official principles we're talking about, but the principle of closure or continuation. When we had the skyscraper top to bottom on the page, your brain knew where it started and your brain knew where it stopped. That's an icon of a skyscraper. When we have this bleed off the page, your brain starts filling in the missing information. So it gives you this sense of scale that could be infinite in your brain. So you kind of, let the brain fill in that missing information. You can do that in all sorts of ways. It's a really fun way to play with negative space, maybe a little bit more advanced than what we need just for a learning slide. But again, this is a way that you can play with some of those elements and create a little bit more interest in the visuals that you're putting together.
All right, our fifth principle as we're moving along is symmetry. So this is about order and balance. Things that are symmetry or symmetrical can allow us to kind of relax a little bit. Our brains don't have to think as hard. Asymmetry can create a little bit of intrigue, but it can also help us see things as groups as well. So the image on the left and the image on the right, we see those as two separate groups because they're symmetrical.
Yeah, thank you, Meg. So Meg already kind of touched on these. It's about not spending time trying to locate what's missing. It's trying to give that brain that rest time. It's why, if humans interpret a symmetrical face, a lot as more beautiful or something like that. We look at symmetry and we get the sense of calm. So you can use that in your slides and make things symmetrical. But sometimes you do want to break that symmetry to show a little bit more interest in the visual, maybe show that something is a little bit different.
So our example of symmetry here, we've got a tree sitting in a field, and we've also purposefully made this entirely symmetrical from left to right, from top to bottom. So the sky is the same depth as the grass here, and it looks okay. It also it's not very interesting. We don't often see trees that are perfectly symmetrical, nor do we often see the horizon exactly at 50% in our view. So if we change things up a little bit, we could apply the rule of thirds in design is to split up your space into thirds, left and right, and place your interesting things on where those thirds connect. So our tree is kind of on the thirds line on the left there, and we've made it a little bit less symmetrical, and we've made our sky bigger and our grass smaller. So this looks a little bit more like what we're used to seeing out there in the wild. And while it leaves some empty space, I wouldn't actually argue that that's not symmetrical, because we've got something heavy on the left, our tree, and then white space itself, you can think of that as holding some weight as well. So there's some symmetry there in that as well. And then it does provide a great opportunity, if you are creating instructional slides, to have a place to put your text. And so that text could also help to balance out the tree in the end as well.
All right, so moving along here to our last principle, which is repetition. And this is repeating elements of a design, whether that be the color, the tone, or the value, the size, the shape, or the direction. So we're really talking about how you can repeat elements as a way to help the learner focus.
All right, so again, we're kind of creating comfort for our learners as we go through our slide deck. We are sort of training them throughout to expect certain colors, certain shapes, and that helps them feel like nothing's not gonna surprise them. They have a sense of what's gonna come next. So it's setting some clear expectations with them. So they can relax and just kind of pay attention to the content that you have in front of them. But if you're going to break that repetition, maybe by having some red orange text and something bold, that can help signal to the learner like, hey, this is different, pay attention, this is something you haven't seen before.
Yeah, so hopefully we've done a good job of that in our presentation with you. Just to highlight this, our own presentation as an example of repetition. You can see that we've used the hexagon shape in various ways, but we've also kind of chopped it up, dissected it a few ways. And we've also used the same color palette throughout. We have consistent fonts, and the slide layout is fairly consistent. We repeat the location of the title. We try to make sure that things stay at a similar alignment. And the agenda is another sense of repetition. We think of how we need to guide learners through our experiences so they can trust us and they feel like they know what they're in for. That's what an agenda does. That's why you always have some sort of high-level map of what you're going to walk your learner through, so they can have some sort of, you know, safe place to know, this is where I am, this is where I'm going, this is where you're going to take me. So we repeated that within this just to keep things moving along. And we also broke the repetition purposefully. So we broke the rule intentionally with some of our examples. So we have like a blue background with a white header. You know, we didn't use that white title anywhere else, but we wanted that to be a full bleed image. We wanted you to feel like you were in that water with that shark and that diver. So you've learned a lot today, but there is a very easy to remember acronym that you can use to kind of hold it and know what you're looking for in your own images. And that acronym is CRAPP, CRAPP. So we're talking about contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. So if you're looking at your visual and you're thinking, oh crap, that's actually a good thing.
All right, so we have covered all 6 of the principles that we were going to talk about with you today. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the design tools that you have at your disposal, specifically within PowerPoint, and some of the features of that program. And I will also say that, so these are some of the features that we're going to cover with you pretty quickly here. And there's a handout. So this picture on the right side of the piece of paper, that is included in the files that are available to you. So if you want to take a look at that, you can download that and use that. It has kind of more step-by-step instructions on how to use these particular features of PowerPoint. So I'm going to actually get myself out of my presentation mode, and you guys get to look at my family there on my desktop real quick while I bring PowerPoint over this way. All right. So I'm just going to cover these a little bit briefly so that we have some time for questions at the end if people have them. So slide masters, if you are not familiar with slide masters, they're super helpful for creating a lot of consistency in your design. So what we're talking about there is if you go over to your view tab and then hit the slide master button, that takes you to a kind of like a back end view of what's available to you, and you can set up placeholders on your screen and adjust the way the text appears in those. You can set up placeholders for text and images as well, and what this does for you is create consistency. So that the slide masters are what determine what's available to you in your layout tab here, and that way you can always come back again to the same layouts each time that you're building something. So in that way, you've got a real consistent, you can reset the slide and things will pop immediately back to how they're set up on your slide master. And I'll leave it at that. Another tool that's really helpful for alignment is grids and guides. So again, in the View tab, if you click on the grid lines option here to turn that on, you'll get these dotted lines. And you can't move those around. They're kind of set in their space. But the guides are something that, that you can move around. So if I, let's see, this guide up here is movable. And I can hold down the control key and it will create a new guide for me as well. So using guides can create a lot of that consistency and alignment because you know just where to put things. Auto guides are another nice feature of PowerPoint recently. I'll turn off my other guides so you can see them, but it's these little lines that pop up when I move a shape around. So I'm sure everybody's probably pretty familiar with using those. The arrange tool, if I select a whole bunch of images, your arrange and align, which you can get to on your home tab or on your format tab. So I can go align and align everything to the left and they'll pop right over there, or I can do a distribute and have everything nicely distributed vertically. So then nothing is catching anybody's attention and pulling their attention just to that one object. They all look like they're equal there. Color palette, it's another, you know, it's a thing we all know is there, but you can set your color palette in your design tab, I believe, but then also in your slide masters as well. So if I want to change the color palette, it'll change what's available in my theme colors. And then if by staying within this color palette and using even some of the shades that are available to me, that can create some harmony in the design that I have. So use that to your advantage whenever possible. Let's see, picture formatting. We just wanted to point out that for example, here we've got two pictures. I believe one of these was originally black and white. This one, let's see if I reset it. Yeah, this one, it was in color. So, you know, if I'm trying to create some harmony in my image, I can use the color options in PowerPoint to very easily change brightness, sharpness, and then I can recolor images, maybe make something black and white so that it matches nicely with another image that I've found. Let's see what else. Format Painter. So if you are used to, you know, changing the format of your text in some way, the Format Painter, if you double click it, it'll stay on, so you can take that text and whatever format you have turned on, it will apply everywhere that you start highlighting. If you just click it one time, it'll apply to whatever you highlight, but then it's turned off, so I know I'm not continuously making that change. And then another quick and easy way to do this, which is what I do most of the time, is I hit Control and Shift and C, and that copies that format to my clipboard, I guess. And then if I can do Control Shift V, it'll paste that format on whatever I have selected. And it's like double clicking, it stays on my clipboard, so I can continue to do Control Shift V over and over again. And that works for text, that works for shapes as well, and lots of different formatting that happens. So I can copy colors of shapes, if there's a shadow or a glow or anything else on my shape, I could copy that with the Format Painter shortcuts as well. And then last but not least, I would like to point out duplicating something. So this is something that you know, maybe you're used to hitting copy and paste of something, but a quick shortcut to getting some more of something is to hold down the control key and then click and drag that object. So I can quickly create multiples of things and get myself a whole grid full of green squares on my screen. So by duplicating something I've already created, it's the same size, the same color. I don't have to worry about recreating it and aligning it and making sure everything lines up perfectly.
Yeah, and although these tools might seem like there's a lot of them, it is such a return on investment the more that you practice with them. As a graphic designer and somebody who designs logos and web pages and things like that, using these tools in PowerPoint, I can really quickly create some pretty high-end stuff. So dive in, try some of them out. We've got some examples within our materials that you can use to play around with. We've created some awful slides that need some love that you can use the principles to improve, and you can play around with these tools and get familiar with them.
So I'll quickly end by letting you know that we have also in our handouts section some ways that you can put these to work, just like Sam mentioned. So in there is a PowerPoint slide deck called Exercise Deck for 6 Graphic Design Principles, and that's for you to play around with. So we've put together a few slides, actually one slide for each principle, and to the right side of each of those slides is also a box that highlights which principle we're thinking you could deploy on that slide or use to improve that slide, and some key pointers for which tools within PowerPoint you could use to adjust that principle. So each one of these is available for you to take a look at, and then there's also at the end as well a slide that has all the pictures that you might want to use, and I think we threw a couple more in there as well. So with that, we would love to know what questions you have, and if you'd like to connect with us and you'd like to get some feedback on the work that you do on your own as homework, we're happy to have you email us a slide deck and we'll give you some pointers or feedback. And you can also connect up with us on LinkedIn. So thank you very much for spending time with us today, and we're happy to stick around and answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies, for this wonderful, interactive, great, and fun presentation. And according to the comments from the audience, it looks like they have really enjoyed it. Okay, so the question that I would like to ask you is from Virginia, and she's curious, does the format painter override the slide master?
It will, yes, it will override whatever you have on your slide master. However, if you click reset on your layout, that reset button that's right beneath the layout button, it will pop some things, not everything, but back to whatever you have set on your slide master. So if you do some changing of things and you want to get back to where you were before, you can always try hitting that reset button, but I'm not going to guarantee that it'll pop everything back.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And people are just crazy about the handouts, so thank you very much, Sam and Meg, for providing them.
Yeah.
And Jonathan is asking, do you have any advice around using these principles or others for transitions between slides or ideas in a training?
Yeah, animation is really what you're getting at, and that is kind of the next step beyond graphic design, right? Once you get the elements looking good, how do they move, and then how is that movement interpreted by the brain? And depending on the look and feel of what you're doing, whether it's something that should take a little bit more time, whether it's more like compliance related and people need to get through it, the main point there is to be consistent. make sure that you're using the same transition throughout. And if you're changing up that transition for maybe like a maybe your section title slides, they fade in, but everything else is just a snap. Make sure that you change that transition intentionally, because just like with cognitive overload with imagery, we can easily get cognitive overload with animations as well. So you definitely want to be deliberate and be consistent. Just make a decision and kind of stick with it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Anne is asking, can you custom design a slide master and rename it?
Yes, yeah, you can actually have multiple slide masters within the same presentation. So you'll end up with multiple different sections in your layout pane, and you can rename them so that you can tell them apart when you're in that view of things. So
yeah, it's actually a
absolutely.
really great idea to give them meaningful names, because using PowerPoint as a leg up to e-learning development, you might have 8 different layouts that you need to repeat throughout that. So having that naming mechanism is going to help you click layout, know exactly what you're looking for, and select the right one. That's a good thought.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for covering that. And a question from J House. Are there any standard PowerPoint layouts that you avoid?
Well, I know that there are some that end up like turning the slide sideways, and I'm never really sure why they built those in there. I haven't found a good use case for those yet. Other ones that I would avoid, I can't think of any off the top of my head that generally come with PowerPoint, because usually they are the things that you're going to need. It's nice to have one that is like a title and then text that goes most of the way across. And then it's also nice to sometimes, when the content warrants it, have 2 columns of text, because maybe you're comparing and contrasting something left and right. So do you have any thoughts on that, Sam?
As a graphic designer and an artist, I always try to create something that's unique, but I borrow and I steal. So that is the name of the game for a lot of us designers. Go find an example of something that you really like. If there's a presentation out there, if there's even a web layout, like somebody who's used the right colors, the right tone, the right, that kind of fits with what you're trying to do. Try to find a pre-populated template that's really close. Maybe you just need to change a few colors, but it's kind of what we all do in the world of design. You can look at awards for best presentation layouts or best web layouts, and you'll see that there's trends. And those trends change even more frequently now that we're all virtual and so much is online. So I mean, it's a really good question, and the way that I answer it is I go find something that I think looks really awesome, and then I'll go to templates and things that are already created and see what can get me close, and then kind of add some finishing touches to make it relevant to my business and my audience.
And I think you perfectly covered the next question from Anne, where you get most of your design inspiration from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's really the community. There's just so much information that's available to us right now, and since so much of our learning is more online and it's more digital right now, I do follow more of the web developer Gestalt principles, and I will look at how web design is coming forward for us right now at this time, because the PowerPoint slides that we start with, they might be once they're uploaded to the LMS or embedded somewhere else, the e-learnings that we create become a part of the web, and so you can use a lot of those same web developer kind of principles for that inspiration, and just seeing like who's the best, who's winning the awards right now, and then see if you can make that your own and apply it to your own organization.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. And Sean is asking, what free resources do you use most often?
Hmm.
There's a couple of, I would say, I'm forgetting the name. There's like a free icon or icon finder, or, you know, some icon sites. Um, there are some really great websites for free imagery as well, like photography. Um, Pexels being one, and Pixabay, and yeah, so those are probably the ones that I use most frequently. Also, I would say for color palette inspiration, I think Adobe Color has a great way that you can play around with changing a color wheel, and then using like the triad or different ways to create your own color palette, and also upload an image and pull colors from an image that you like or that you want to use as inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to add on to that, Google search, click on your images tab, go to advanced image search. Down at the bottom, you're going to get commercial free. You also get some options for, I can use this if I modify it slightly. That's going to pull from a lot of the free image websites out there. That's a quick tip that I use for finding icons, finding images. Just put on that filter on your Google search and search for the keyword that you're looking for. You can even add in, you know, vector or PNG. If you know you want a transparent background, you can add that into the search. So you're only getting back the right image type that you're looking for as well.
Perfect. Thank you for this answer. And it just struck my mind that for all the iSpring users out there, I wanted to point out the content library that we have integrated within iSpring Suite. And it has lots of backgrounds, icons that you guys can use, as well as different characters according to your particular industry, as well as slide templates that are built for you, for your use. And the only thing that you need to do is to put in the text. And I am mostly sure that they followed the rules that you ladies have covered during today's webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. Take advantage of those resources for sure.
Perfect. So let's cover maybe another couple of questions, and after that, we will need to wrap up our amazing webinar. So Marcine is asking, should we use design ideas in PowerPoint or use Slide Master?
Good question. I personally haven't used the design ideas pane myself a whole lot, so I can't actually speak to what that does in terms of applying a different slide master or that. Sam, do you know what that does exactly?
From my own experience, it's when you're building slides, it's going to give you suggestions for how to apply those layouts, and it kind of snaps everything to that. I do not know the repeatability of it, and that's the big trade-off there. That's what you want to find out. If you need to like copy and paste manually, you know, items from slide to slide, once you get it to the right layout, whether it's from that suggestion or whatever, you're going to have to make those changes on each slide. Perhaps you use the ideas pane to set up your first, your first slide. Once you like the way it looks, then you transition that over to your slide master. So you can still use the ideas for inspiration, but really for the repeatability and for being able to go back and edit your content easily, once you come up with a layout that you like, go ahead and build a master based on that, and that'll get you up and running.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for your advice. And let's cover this question from Anthony. Research shows that providing learners a practical, concise, and visual job aid to supplement their courses helps retention and helps them apply the skills in practice. So, you also produce summarized job aids typically for a course?
Yeah, we do, and it's about offering learners like a buffet, right? You don't know what the learner is going to need at that point in time. Especially in this kind of virtual environment where we're creating libraries of content and we're putting it out there for our learners, and they will go search for things when they need it. So if somebody doesn't have the time to go through a 2-hour e-learning to find, you know, this one feature that you were talking about, when you offer these job aids, you're offering a moment of need resource, which is absolutely something that people go to when they have short attention spans, when we're all working from home and we can't really put the same amount of time into our learning that we could before. So it's great to chunk up that information, have that PDF as a moment of need, similar to how you guys are liking that tip sheet that we created for PowerPoint. That's something that you guys can save. You can play with it later, and it's not going to be a big investment of time for you to find that or find the value quickly.
Yep. And I would argue that all of the design principles that we covered today, you know, we were focused on how do you present this as or use these in a presentation mode, but
Yeah.
all of them apply to written documents as well. You know, changing the color, the size, the font, the boldness of your text can go a long way to helping learners be able to chunk information together and understand what relates to what. So all of everything we've talked about today goes for written documents as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you for this detailed reply, and hopefully, Anthony, that answers your question. And I think at this time, we are ready to wrap up this wonderful, brilliant session. And I would like to thank all of our attendees for, first of all, tuning in today, and second of all, being so active and asking these amazing questions. I will be sending the recording to all of you guys, so no worries if you missed something. You will get it, and you will get a chance to review it. And thanks, of course, to you, Sam and Mag, for doing this presentation for all iSpringers. We very, very, very much appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paulina.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
All right. Yeah, exactly. That's very important nowadays. So I hope that everyone has a wonderful day. Don't forget to take this survey to let us know how you liked this session, but I'm sure you loved it. And we'll see you at the next webinar. Bye, everybody. Bye, Sam. Bye, Mag.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.